After making life unaffordable for millions of Canadians, making the dream of home ownership impossible for millions of Canadians, flooding the country with the highest levels of immigration in the world, and for allowing refugees and asylum seekers to enter this country at record numbers, the federal government has finally decided to step up and do something. They are now going to use your tax dollars to house migrants and asylum seekers. Over $300 million to be exact. After all, it appears the federal government doesn't want the optics of migrants sleeping out on the sidewalk to deter more of them entering this country. And if you think the situation is bad right now, just wait. Even though we have Ukrainian refugees already living in tents, the federal government is expected to take in 90,000 more in the next 2 months. Asylum claims from Mexicans entering this country have increased 2,000% since Justin Trudeau dropped visa requirements from the country. Temporary resident status is set to be given to 1,000 people fleeing from Gaza in the coming weeks, and according to new Stats Canada data, nearly half of all of Canada's government-funded refugees are still relying on government handouts and assistance. Before we get into the show, drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, stick around for the ratio of the week, and the comment question for the episode is this: what needs to be done to fix Canada's immigration system? Let me know your answer in the comments below, and let's get into it. Last week, it was announced that the federal government would be issuing $362 million of your tax money to Toronto and Quebec to house migrants. According to Mark Miller, this program is important because it gets shelters over people's heads, particularly with the temperature that it is outside, but it needs reform, and that's something that will have to be worked on in the coming months. Quebec Premier François Legault has urged the federal government to slow the flow of asylum seekers entering Quebec because government services are being pushed to their breaking points. According to the CBC, as of 2 weeks ago, more than 7,300 asylum seekers were staying in about 4,000 hotel rooms provided by the federal government. It's nice to see the federal government taking the concerns of homeless asylum seekers seriously. I can only imagine what it must feel like for perhaps a homeless veteran in this country or a homeless First Nations person who reads that from the immigration minister and is wondering, well, where's the support for them exactly? $370 million is certainly not nothing. And of course, it's important to remember that the federal government's first responsibility is to take care of its own citizens first, not those of people who are seeking asylum in Canada because it's a better country than where they came from. The Toronto Star just couldn't hide their excitement when they found out that your tax dollars would be sent to house asylum seekers. Here's the headline from that outlet: Ottawa finally comes through with refugee funding for Toronto. Finally, the feds have housed asylum seekers. Of course, what the legacy media really doesn't want to say is that it was struggling Canadians who can barely afford rent, gas, and housing for themselves and their families who paid for housing asylum seekers. And when the federal government prints money to solve the problems that they created, such as flooding the country with asylum seekers and migrants, well then it's inflation that hurts struggling Canadians the most. Just like when Justin Trudeau wrote on Twitter, "Welcome to Canada, Canada is open to the world," these federal incentives to house migrants and asylum seekers operate as a giant green light to those around the world who want to enter Canada on visas, but then immediately claim asylum. This was uncovered last week by Global News, who were at Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport in Montreal, and uncovered just this phenomenon taking place with Mexicans entering the country. Take a look at this report.
Arturo Nava is fresh off a flight from Mexico City, ready to start a new life in Canada. The petrochemical engineer traveled on a tourist visa, but as soon as he landed at Montreal's Trudeau Airport, he requested refugee status. He says there's a lot of talk in Mexico about how supportive Canada is to refugees, though he admits he didn't have much information about what the process entails.
Nervioso, la verdad, nervioso. No sabía si me iban a deportar, no sabía qué iba a pasar.
Engineers from Mexico arriving on fake tourist visas to only immediately claim asylum in Canada. Interesting. Mexico must really be bad for those engineers.
In 2023, Quebec processed more than 25,000 asylum claims at the airport, more than double the amount of 2022. In general, asylum requests in Quebec have exploded in the past 2 years. In 2021, Quebec received a total of just over 10,000 requests, compared to more than 59,000 in 2023. In 2021, there were more than 1,300 requests from Mexican citizens. In 2023, the government received more than 15,000 requests. A high number of people with Haitian and Colombian citizenship also requested refugee status in the province. For the first 15 days of 2024, Quebec's Labor Ministry says there have been nearly 10,000 requests. That's an average of 656 per day. An estimated 30% come from asylum seekers.
The comments on this YouTube video from Global News really speak to the fact that Canadians are running out of patience with this system, and how can you possibly blame them at this point? Offering payments to foreigners to ignore our immigration laws is insane, one user commented. It was a matter of time before Biden's open border policy affected Canada. Taxpayers cannot afford to pay for others who cannot support themselves. We have seniors, veterans, and individuals living at poverty levels, using food banks to survive. It's disheartening that refugees receive benefits and favorable treatment without actively working and contributing to Canada. What about the hardworking Canadian citizens, veterans, and seniors who have played a significant role in building this country? I'm frustrated that our hard-earned money is being directed to these individuals and countries rather than prioritizing our own needs. Canada's former Chief of the Defense Staff, General Rick Hillier, said that there's a Ukrainian family living in a tent in downtown Toronto, and that Canada, as he says, is so bad that this family is going to return to war-torn Ukraine instead of staying in Canada. And in the next 60 days, 90,000 more Ukrainians are expected to come to Canada. Now, where exactly are these people going to live? Is the taxpayer going to be responsible for housing these Ukrainians as well? Over the past 2 years, Canada has already taken in over 250,000 Ukrainian refugees. Here's the thing. Canadians are good people, probably the nicest people in the world. We want to help people who are in need, and we have a history of doing that. But Canadians themselves are struggling like never before. Go to your local food bank. Take a look at the living conditions that many young Canadians are faced with today. There aren't enough houses for Canadians who have lived here, whose families have been here for many generations and have served this country, let alone millions of people coming in from the rest of the world, and hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers and migrants and refugees from all over the world. If you want to try and build resentment in Canada and maybe turn the Canadian population against newcomers, well, this is exactly what you might be doing. So none of this is helping anybody. It's not helping immigrants, it's not helping refugees and asylum seekers, and most importantly, it's not helping Canadians. And according to new data from Statistics Canada, only 56% of government-sponsored refugees are participating in the labor market. And that's not just having a job, by the way. That participation in the labor market includes people who are looking for a job. So if you're looking for a job, the federal government assumes you're participating in the labor market. Only 56% of them. So close to half of government-sponsored refugees in this country are not participating in the labor market and are not even looking for a job. Compare that now to privately sponsored refugees, where between 2014 and 2019, those refugees who were reporting positive income within their first year of landing in this country never fell below 70%. And what is described as a blended visa office referred refugee, those who came to this country in their first year and reported positive earnings on an income never fell below 40%. So just remember, when you pay your taxes to the government every year, just know that some of that money is going to house asylum seekers and migrants. All right, time for a ratio of the week. The winner this week is Immigration Minister Mark Miller. He could have won it for many different social media posts, but he wins it for this. After expressing frustration with the Israeli government that Gazans with Canadian connections are not able to get out of Gaza and come to this country. As we work to get Gazans with Canadian family connections to safety, it is beyond frustrating to see little movement from local authorities in facilitating passage through the Rafah border crossing. Canada won't be deterred in trying to get these people to safety. Well, it appears Canadians on social media don't seem nearly as disappointed about this situation as Mark Miller is. In fact, Miller only was able to get 296 likes to 581 replies on this video he posted. As one user writes, "Strange that no other Arab nation wants to welcome the Palestinians for a reason. Good enough for the Liberals, though. Serious question. Are they trying to ruin Canada? We've already seen the blocked roads, 6 feet under threats, stalk at MP homes, harassing seniors at skate parks. This is what we already deal with now. But let's bring in more people from Gaza that 70% supported Hamas. Great idea. I do get frustrated here in Winnipeg. I do invite you to Winnipeg and see homeless people waiting for food and shelter and medical services on Main Street or asking for money. Everywhere else, that happens in all of the cities. Are you proud? Truly disappointing to see this at a time when so many Canadians are struggling themselves. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.